Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another daily tip. Today we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite baits, and that is a lipless crankbait. You know, I think a lipless crankbait is potentially the most versatile hard bait that's made. They catch fish throughout the year. They catch fish from super deep water to shallow water. You can fish them through heavy cover. You can fish them for schooling fish in open water. So from that standpoint, a lipless crankbait is an absolute dynamite lure to be using. But having said that, there's also some tips that I think can make you a better angler if you're aware of them. So that's what we want to touch base on today. You know, a lipless crankbait really is one of those baits that has caught more big fish for me than any other bait. I want to say of the top 5 biggest bass I've ever caught, 3 of them were on a lipless crankbait. I had a 10.5 pounder in a Bass Open on Lake Chickamauga. I had an 8+ pounder on the Harris Chain of Lakes. I've had an 8+ pounder on Gunnersville. Just a lot of really big fish, and that's because it's a bait that does a good job at triggering reaction strikes. And a lot of times, to catch the biggest bass in the lake, they're smart, so you got to actually get them to react to your bait and bite the bait out of aggression versus out of feeding behavior. And that's what a lipless crankbait does so well. So here are some tips for you. The first one has to do with the retrieve. Generally speaking, I would say that the majority anglers out there cast and wind a lipless crankbait, meaning they throw it out, pretty much straight retrieve it back to the boat. That'll catch fish in some circumstances, but I assure you, you will catch a lot more fish if you fish the bait more in a yo-yo style retrieve. Meaning, even if you're fishing in open water, you want to retrieve it, kill it, retrieve it, kill it. And what happens is that bait will go, and then when you kill it, because it's a heavier lure, it'll actually drop pretty fast. You retrieve it, and it'll keep moving towards you, but again, you kill it, you're giving it yo-yo, meaning it's going up and down in the water column. If I'm fishing anywhere where I can make contact with the bottom, I'm going to let the bait fall to the bottom, and I'm actually going to then stroke the rod tip to give it more of a explosion off the bottom to get that bait to move higher in the water column. I'm going to let it fall back to the bottom, and I'm going to do that. So really what you're looking to do is make this bait move vertical in the water column instead of just going horizontal in the water column. Because every time you stop the bait, and every time you start the bait, that's a good opportunity to create a reactionary effect. Now, I want to also add, because these baits work great around cover, like grass, rock, and even wood in some instances, you want to do the same thing. You want to deflect off that cover to give the bait that stop and go effect to create that explosion coming out of the grass. Those are the most important things you can do when throwing a lipless crankbait in terms of generating additional strikes. Now, we all know how good a lipless crankbait like the Berkeley War Pig is when fishing around grass. One of the best all-time grass baits out there, especially for a hard bait. One key is to either replace the front treble hook to make it bigger than the rear treble hook, or to make the rear treble hook smaller than the front treble hook. I generally don't like to fish a bait that has the same treble hooks like we've got here. This is just right out of the package. These are both size 6s, I believe, that are on here. So what I'll do is I'll take the front hook, I'll drop it down to a size 4, or I'll take the rear hook and drop it down, or I'll take the front hook, make it bigger to a size 4, take the rear hook, make it smaller to a size 6. Really, the reason I'm doing that is I want to create more drag on the middle hook or the front hook. And what happens with that is that'll actually make your bait want to run more nose down, because you're catching more drag here and you've made the tail end lighter. So if you take your bait from running horizontal to running a little bit more vertical, what that means is when you come in contact with cover, the nose of the bait's going to hit first. If the nose of that bait hits first, you deflect better off that cover. If your bait's running more horizontal, you have a much better chance of catching the hook first. So I personally will make sure that my front hook is always one size bigger than my rear hook. That's something that I think is very, very important. Some come stock that way, some don't, but I'm always checking that. As well as just checking my hooks in general for sharpness. You want to make sure you've got really sharp hooks when you're talking about using a lipless, because one, you bang it around on cover, which dulls the hooks quite a bit. So you could be using dull hooks, which are going to hurt your hookups. At the same time, you're also talking about a lot of fish that come up and swat at the bait, that are biting out of instinct and reaction versus actually trying to eat the bait. So sharp hooks will help you get a hook into that fish versus missing those fish. So you want to make sure you're throwing sharp hooks as well. Now, another tip I've got for you if you're fishing around hard cover like wood is to actually take the front treble and then remove the front hook. So if I take this treble and lay it on the belly of the bait, I've got one that sticks up. I will actually cut that one hook off the treble hook so that I've got a double hook, and that double hook will run flat on the belly and prevent me from getting hooked on that one barb that's sticking out. Generally speaking, if you're fishing around wood, this is the one that's going to kill you. So I'll actually remove that and fish with 2 hooks on that treble hook versus running all 3 hooks on that treble hook. That's something that will greatly reduce the amount of hookups when fishing hard cover, but really doesn't have much of an effect on your overall hookups with the fish. Another tip, and this goes back to your retrieve styles that I definitely would recommend, is if you're fishing a clean bottom, so you're fishing a place that's got a nice pea gravel point, or you've got a gravel flat or a rock area, or even sand in some instances, don't be afraid to fish it like a jig. Throw it out, let it go to the bottom, and then just sweep your rod to drag it along the bottom. And what'll happen is the bait will actually, vibrate as it's coming along the bottom, stir up the bottom, and then when you kill it, it'll rest flat. And it creates a really good imitation of a feeding fish or a crayfish that's scooting along the bottom. And that can be something that can trigger a lot of strikes, especially during your low pressure days where a lot of your fish are glued right to the bottom. It's something that I've had a lot of really good success with, also in very clear water where the fish are doing a lot of sight feeding, because when you do that, the bait stirring up that bottom creates a little bit of a smoke cloud, a silt cloud, and the bass are going to eat it from that standpoint. It's something that goes very, very overlooked when fishing a lipless crankbait. The last tip I've got for you has to do with the selection of size of crankbait that you're going to throw. If I'm fishing around grass, generally I'll actually choose the bait based on the weight of the bait, but it's based on how that bait sits on top of the grass. Meaning, if I'm fishing around some thicker grass and the grass is, say, 2 feet under the surface and I'm bringing this over the top, if I kill this and let it go into the grass, is it going to bury down in the grass, or is it just going to settle on top of the grass? I want my bait to settle on top of the grass. I don't want it to bury way down in the grass. If it buries down in the grass, at that point, you're going to have a lot of casts that end up getting ruined because you're not going to be able to snap the grass off freely. If the bait comes down and rests on top, you might have a hook or so that wrap around a stalk of grass, but when you go to rip that free, it comes through that so much better. So generally speaking, I'm going to choose the weight of the lipless crankbait based on how thick the grass is and how much my bait is actually going to fall down in that grass. I want it to rest on top so I can snap that bait and fish it through clean. Now also keep in mind, if you're fishing thicker grass like that, generally the fish aren't going to be down in it anyways. So they're going to be either on top, or they're going to be along the edge, or they're going to be holes of the grass. So from that standpoint, letting your bait get way down in that grass isn't all that beneficial either, because that's not where the fish are going to be. So don't think a 1/2 ounce lipless crankbait is always the best choice. You really want to pair it up with the cover and the depth that you're fishing to make sure that you're maximizing the performance of that bait. If you learn all of these things and you put your time in with a lipless crankbait, you will see the value of it. One of the absolute best baits at generating big fish into biting. Just one of my all-time favorite baits. Just something that I've pretty much got tied on year round because it's that versatile. So let me know in the comment section, guys. Do you have some other lipless crankbait tips that others can learn from you? If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.